Hello, family. It's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors. And we also offer trauma healing trainings across the country, including at churches. And if you are interested in becoming a trauma informed church, we encourage you to reach out to us through our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today we're talking about an important subject, and that is about healing the family. And I am very honored to welcome an amazing woman of God, Dr. Phyllis West, to the show. I actually had a chance to be on a podcast with her a couple weeks back, and we were talking about this very vital topic. And so I wanted to bring her on the show today to share. And her background in social work and public health has been over 30 years of work in the field. She is currently the director of social justice at Governor State University and also the director of their legal clinic. She's doing amazing work in the community. And so I'm so honored to welcome her as a guest on our show. Thank you, Dr. West, for being here with us today.
Absolutely. It's a joy to come back together to discuss mental health and spirituality, in which we both care about deeply.
Yes, we do. And it is important for us to be able to draw the connection between what's happening in our community, communal trauma, and also how it impacts the family. And I think I would like for us to start there. I think sometimes we look at things from an individual standpoint around behavior, which we do need to address. But let's talk about how certain systemic issues in our community also impact us as a family.
I want to tell you, I think, and this is part of when we had that conversation at Victory Apostolic, one of the greatest challenges I see that we fail to acknowledge is that poverty is one of the most traumatic experiences anybody can experience. It affects the family. It brings stress on because people are just trying to eat, right? They're trying to pay their bills. They're trying to feed their families. They're wanting to keep the lights on, and they have to get to work. And all of this tension affects how your family navigate, right, the day to day, right? And how do we care? So I want to say trauma, the true trauma and the core of all the different types of communal trauma we experience, from gun violence to domestic violence and to mass incarceration. Every time we look at any of these systemic issues, at the core of it is poverty
Hmm.
and not having the resources we need, right? If you had money, you can get mental health services. If you don't, you get untreated trauma that affects your entire family.
Yes. Yes, and then you also are forced to make decisions that we wish no one had to make. Decisions around, do I keep the lights on? Do we eat? Do I work a double, or do I am I here for to spend time with my children? Uh, so we see that it plays a major factor. You're right. You're right. And so we were talking right before we started our interview about how when it comes to families who are navigating poverty and having to make these difficult decisions, and quite frankly, someone might not necessarily struggle with poverty, but might still have to make choices around spending time with a newborn or having difficulties with being able to offer that child support in early stages. Let's talk about the attachment, the not having a strong attachment, and how it can impact a child going into adolescent years and in adulthood.
I think the reality of attachment, and when we look at it, and I want to definitely recommend my favorite is Dr. Gabor Mate when he talks about attachment. He's a Canadian psychiatrist. And it's not to make people feel guilty, but it's to understand we have to work, right? Usually we send people back to work 2 weeks later, and people are proud to say, I just had a baby and I went back to work. That is very harmful to the mother child bond, because that infant is depending on their livelihood, they have to attach to something, right? You have to attach to someone. And usually you want that someone to be the parent. However, if you have to work and you have to send your child to a daycare, now we're saying, okay, child, infant, attached to any caregiver who's going to pick you up. So where's that true bond? And over the years, right, from infancy all the way up 4 or 5 years old, the child comes back home and the parent's like, okay, now obey me. Well, I haven't been with you all day. Now you want me to listen to you. We listen to people we're attached to. The child now becomes confused of who am I really attached to because I spent all this time attached to the strangers at a daycare, one or two of them. Yes, are they protected? Yes, number one, we want them to be protected. Hopefully, they're in a protected environment. But the reality is, the infant gets confused. The brain is not developed. And so we hope and pray that that attachment is something safe, someone safe to hold them, like if there's a grandma, just give you an example, or an auntie. At least we know then there's a navigation of attachment with two people. But when we place our babies in these big environments, they're being told to attach to their peers at an early age, right? And then the providers of the daycare. So it is confusing, and in essence, that begins the disruption of attachment early on. And that is a systemic issue with our values as a nation,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Family Leave Act, we need a Family Leave Act for a reason because we want to stay home a little bit longer to attach with our children in those early infant stages. The delicacy of those first 3 years are so vital. And when you don't have those first 3 years, it's very hard. Not saying that we shouldn't work, but we should be mindful of how do we reattach versus reprimand in those early years, right? I don't think we understand the developmental stages and understand that attachment period will be less forceful on saying, didn't I tell you to do something? You're not listening to me. Well, I haven't been around you. But we know that in order to attach, we love pleasing people we're attached to.
Yes, 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 yes. And Dr. West, how might an unfortunate situation where the attachment was broken, if you will, even if the parent, they're doing their best, but they're trying to make ends meet, whatever the case is, the attachment was not there. How might that young person who develops into a teen, develops into adult, how might they struggle later?
We just talked about an example of how attachment can be disrupted on a day to day. That's just a day to day. However, every time we come back together, we have an opportunity to reconnect and take care of our loved ones. That's through play, that's through feeding, that's through touch, and just spend more time touching and feeling and with our bonding, reconnecting, giving time to reconnect versus saying, okay, we just got in, do your homework.
That could be a protective factor that offsets that in a
For
sense.
exactly, for people who have to work, because we all have to work, right?
Mhm.
Need that time just to let somebody get comfortable being back home. Let us all get comfortable being back home. And instead of saying, we have to do this, we have to do that, and just being on a regimented task. I want to bring that up because that's the daily, and I don't want us to feel guilty because of our reality, but understand, let's focus on re-engagement, not guilt. Let's focus on reattaching and reconnecting, not guilt. Now, right. That is very different than the question you're asking me, Reverend Jocelyn, over this notion of what happens when we truly have, and I'm going to use the word connection and disconnection, right? And it's still an attachment. What happens when you don't attach? People who don't attach or who haven't had good attachments usually are experiencing a deep neglect or an abuse, right? So if you've had a deep neglect, where people we see often who haven't been raised with their biological parents, or who have been abandoned, or just ignored at home, or verbally abused, physically abused, sexually abused, different types. So those are deep wounds, right? Deep disconnections. That's a whole nother level. And that will disrupt an attachment as well. Any type of abuse, or being sent away after you had an attachment, such as somebody going to jail, right? I had an attachment, but now I got to reattach to someone else because mama or daddy went to prison. Uh, what do you do with those losses? You, as an adult, as a child, the good news is we're resilient, and anybody who truly attaches to a child and is there to show that I'm going to care and protect and provide for you, usually there's an attachment. As long as there's love there, there's an attachment. And although you can experience a loss, you still have someone to love you. That's why community is so important. That's why the church is so important. That's why extended family is so important. That's why other mothers, neighbors are so important, because there are variations of attachment. Remember, that's what we were talking about. We don't want to believe we don't have, because we do have, it just looks different. Now, if someone, and I see this often, where you have people who have been violated, physically or sexually abused over time, that takes away from the attachment, because if it's a child, psychologically, how do they process that? If you're told, don't tell, I will harm you. What do you do as an adult with that? You find an outlet to process. They need to come and see you for therapy, to have someone to hear their voice, to say, what happened to me? I need someone to bear witness that what has happened to me is not right. What we get in many of our communities is, don't tell anybody, and don't you dare talk about this outside this house. Or in a lot of my research at Cook County Jail, there were women who were violated who were told it didn't happen to them, but it did, in their families. And if people were complaining, it's like, well, you wonder why I'm on heroin? You wonder why I'm on cocaine? I am trying to numb. And that's what we have to understand. Addiction is usually a numbing to try to heal a deep pain. It's not because people want to use. They are covering up something deeper. That's why we have to have a voice, and we have to stop thinking, oh, we're going to protect this image. We want to look and appear that we're successful, but deep down inside we're hurting. It's an empty shell, and we want to fill that up. I can't tell you how many times men in prison have told me this, that they too have been raped and violated. In class, they have conversations with me about this. And they knew. When I asked them, when was the first time you felt a disconnection? They usually go to the first time they got in trouble. And I tell them, wait a minute, step back. Can you think of another time before that where you felt like you weren't connected? You weren't attached to your family? And they were like, yeah, when I came from the hospital, when I was in the hospital for 2 months or 3 months, and when I came home and I didn't feel close. Most of the men who I worked with in prison think that their disconnection started when they committed a crime. But I have to walk them through that when they really realize it, their disconnection and unattachment started at infancy. And then during their childhood, and then when they were violated by the babysitter. And then they realized, wait a minute, yeah, I got in trouble, but I had a lot of stuff going on with me, and I had nobody to talk to. right? I had no one to talk to.
Yeah, yeah, wow, and drawing the connections, right? When sometimes we act a certain way, we do certain things, and we don't know why, and we feel condemned, we feel guilty, we feel ashamed, but it's all connected, these dots, and sometimes it's tracing the cord back to those things, and you're saying a lot of this can be not always, but attachment is something to look at, to maybe explore, to see, what might have happened.
Well, understand what attachment is, right? Attachment means with I'm connecting with and to another human being who I'm safe with, who I can be vulnerable with, who I know will have my back and protect me forever. And I know they won't let anybody touch me, right? My mom just died 2 years ago, and she would have been 90 years old. And I now see that I had an amazing attachment. We were poor, we struggled, everything, but guaranteed that I was a little girl who had protection. Someone allowed me to have my voice. That is a big thing in our community, right? And I knew that I had a safe place. I was always safe. That is what people want, right? Every human being wants to know they're safe and that someone will protect them and will allow them to have a voice.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's the voice is huge, especially since it's been stripped when sometimes when it comes to trauma, like the things that they've gone through, they've been silenced because, as you mentioned, they were told not to talk about what happened to them. And so voice is something that's a part of the healing process.
Voice is huge throughout our lifetime. And when we don't have it, right? If you're told that you're supposed to be a certain way, you're supposed to do a certain thing, don't talk, be private, be all of these things. Or if I tell you something, oh, don't talk, don't let anybody know you talked about that, or be quiet. And you never have a voice, you're going to grow up as an adult without a voice. Either you're going to suppress it, right? And it's going to be depression, internalized, or you're going to be angry and it's going to come out somewhere. You know that symbolism we talk about in therapy? You put all these things in the closet, or I don't know about you, but my sisters, when we were little, mama would say, did you clean the closet? And no, did you clean the room? We say, yeah, mama, we cleaned the room.
Threw all the stuff in the
We
closet.
put everything in the closet. What happens when the closet gets full?
Exactly.
Mama opened that door, everything fell
Just
out.
falls out. Yep.
That's anger. That's pain. You keep stuffing it in. You keep stuffing it in, and one day it's just going to fall out if we don't take care of it. It's going to fall out in our work life. It's going to fall out in our personal lives. It's going to fall out. However, if we unpack that, right, and open that closet and say, yeah, it looks a little mess, but I can sit with Reverend Jocelyn and just pull a few pieces out and fold them at a time and organize it and say, okay, now I can talk about it.
Right. Amen. Yes.
Yeah, and now
Yeah.
I feel normal because I'm not embarrassed. What do I have to be ashamed for?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a powerful analogy. And when I think about this, it's important for us to address this issue because unfortunately, when we're going through life doing the best we can, we might not have been able to control any of the circumstances that happened to us in our childhood and things. But what can happen is we can possibly seek out unhealthy attachments with individuals that can it could be harmful to us. And I would just love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
Unhealthy attachments. If
Hmm.
we're not healed, we're going to gravitate towards what feels comfortable and familiar.
Hmm.
And if it's abnormal, or I'm saying abnormal, if we're used to bad things, right? Or if we're used to things that are not right, that becomes our normal. So maybe having sexual relations is not appropriate, putting that in quotes, right? At a younger age. We know that as a child. But if our body has become accustomed and somebody violated us, and that becomes our norm, then the only sign of attachment I know and familiar is having those sexual relations at a young age and keep that going because that's a familiar attachment. Now my body, my mind, my spirit is used to something that was probably wrong from the beginning, but it's my normal. And I'm attracted to what's my normal. We have to realize that just because something happened to us, we don't have to continue that. But we gravitate, if it's abuse, if you used to someone abusing you in a relationship or you had domestic violence in your family, you could be attracted to someone who's an abuser. And you just take it. You take someone talking to you in a not a disrespectful way. You take someone controlling your life that you don't have a say. And so it becomes a pattern, a generational pattern that if we saw it in our families, if we saw it in our community, and we didn't address it, and no one said, no, this is wrong, and we're not going to do this, we're going to continue it until we're aware and say, this is wrong. I don't want this. I want my life to be different. And that is the beauty of resilience and faith, because a lot of young people have said, I'm going to do my life different. I want something different for my life. And we're very intentional. And that's why we need to seek out the help and the support from mental health professionals like yourselves so we can process that, like yourself, so we can process what do I want different in my life? I am not defined by my family's history or my community's history. I am not defined by someone who harmed me, right? And right, if we're truly say, I'm a child of God, then as my mother would say, you absolutely are, and God didn't make any junk. Which means, right, our birthright is abundance. And anybody who's harmed us, we need to just step away from that and let that pattern go and remember who were we at birth? Because you were meant to be here.
Dr. West, that's so powerful. And in some cases, that's going to take a lot of courage. In all cases, I think it's going to take courage, but you might upset people. Your family might not be in agreement with you making steps that you need to make for your healing. And for someone who is dealing with that right now, where their family's like, we're going to keep putting this stuff in the closet. But you're like, I want to break the cycle with me. What words of encouragement would you offer that individual?
You better talk about courage. You better have a whole show on courage because courage is unpopular. Courage will make you feel isolated and alone, right? Because think about our world today. If we had people who had courage, why are we having wars? Why are we harming each other? Why are we not speaking up? Why are we say, that's none of my business. I'm going to mind my business. But you see someone hurting, right? And in our own families, let's just be quiet. Courage means that you're telling your family, I'm going to disrupt homeostasis, right? That's that word we use. I'm going to disrupt homeostasis. And those of you who don't know that mental health word, it just simply means this is our normal, right? This is what we call normal in our family. And I don't want to do normal anymore. So I'm going to do something different. And someone's going to say, but you're changing our family. You're right. I'm changing our family. So courage means that if you have the courage to do something right that you know is right in your soul and in your life, some people are going to pull back and say, no, don't change. Come back. We want to stay a family, but our family is not right. Our friends are not, it's not right. This, if I do normal, normal can get me locked up. If I do normal, right, normal will keep me suffering and somebody violating me, or then they could violate my children, on and on and on. And so you have to have courage. I can tell you of a family that this gentleman had two families. The first family had 10 children, and then that wife died. And those children left for some reason, left that house. 10. And this was a very well-known man in the neighborhood, owned the business. When that family left, he got a new family. And that family was 10 children. We later found out that that other family, uh, that something happened, that he impregnated someone in that family and gave birth to his own grandchild. Finally, a child from the first family spoke up, and that man went to prison. And she had the courage to say no more. She had the courage to say, you are around other grandchildren, and this cycle could be repeating, and I'm going to stop it. So the courage is to live out our faith of who we say, who and what we believe in, who we say we are, who we say we believe. If you're walking a walk of faith, then your courage is in God to guide you, right? We have to have courage, but courage could be lonely. So you find someone to support you through your fear, to push
Hmm.
through it, to do what's right. Honestly, and sometimes that means even reporting our own family members
Yes. Oh.
and breaking that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
because that
Mm.
is not love. Love doesn't hurt.
Right.
Love does not hurt. So my encouragement would say, find, you have a biological family, and then you can have a family that you create. You find friends and the family that you can create to say, I need your support. Help me find some support, mental health, and get encouragement to do the right thing. But because we're never alone, God will always send us someone and what we need. That is the prayer. If you don't have the answer, just pray, God, send me what I need. You will always get what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so powerful. And I know that's speaking to someone who's listening today. And we pray that God, as you said, He give you what you need and gives you that courage, and you don't have to walk it alone. And I also believe that there's freedom in that. And I want to talk a little bit more as we close our time together. This 30 minutes went so fast, but what what is healing to you? What does healing look like?
Oh, wow. Healing for me. I think healing for me, first and foremost, is what brings you joy. Healing starts with those things that bring you joy, regardless of what's happening in the world. You tap into what brings you joy until you get to where you want to be. And sometimes I remind people of when they were children. What brought you joy? For me, it was dancing and jump rope. And as an adult, it's gardening, right? Because I feel like I'm touching the earth. God created the earth. Let me touch the earth, right? For others, it's going to church, right? If that 1 hour in a week gives you joy, you start there. That's healing. And then you say, okay, now how do I hold on to this joy? How do I hold on to this joy a little bit more? And how do I return? Because that joy is just giving you, joy should be daily. We should find some joy daily, even if it's talking to someone who we know is speaking love into us. And just say, I just want to hear your voice. All right. Because it's saying, hold on. Healing to me means holding on and giving ourselves grace. God is not grace. God is not a punitive God. You don't have to be perfect. We don't need to be perfect. We talked about that.
Hmm.
Perfection is overrated.
Yes, it is.
It is overrated. We don't need an image. We need authentic relationships with people. A hug. Hug heals. Touching heals. Anything, taking a walk is healing in nature. Just, we feel joy a lot all the time. We just hold on to it. So to me, healing is the day to day because it's the sun. right? When it's nice and warm outside, the sun is beaming on us. It's the subtle ways of saying, God is knocking on the door saying, I'm still here. You see that song? I'm still here. And we start there. Therapy, ongoing for things that are more serious, uh, that we know we experienced trauma, we didn't grow up with our family, we're missing, we feel abandonment. I think those are deep seated issues that we need. Counseling and therapy is so important to process. Have a space just for you, a sacred space just for you to process, what do I do about these feelings? And what does it mean to me to heal? I think healing is so individual. You have to define it. Yeah.
It is. Thank you, Dr. West. This has been a powerful interview. I think you freed some people just in your boldness. So thank you for sharing with us today.
I thank you. And I know that there's some intergenerational healing that we must do.
Mhm.
That's the courage, and we should do it because we're worthy of healing. We're worthy of breaking these cycles. And when we break them in our families, we break them in our communities.
Mhm.
We do.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. West. Thank you for being here with us today. I thank all of you for tuning into this episode. With so many nuggets that she shared. And I just appreciate her reminder that there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. And we can make decisions to be courageous, even if we have resistance. Resistance will come, but you are worth all the work. And so we want you to be encouraged by today's episode. We thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, please, first of all, subscribe. And if you're watching on or listening on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a review and share this episode with a friend. Also, if you're looking for a Christian counselor, be sure to check us out at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. So that's it for this week, family. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you stay encouraged and you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon, family.